Hey, listening squirrels. I so like this author of The Water Ghost and The Midnight Visitor that I'm going to read all I can find of his if that's cool with y'all. Tell me if you're not enjoying his. But from everybody I've heard from that have left comments, they've all been positive. The Speck on the Lens is the name of this from John Kendrick Bangs. Talking about inventions, said the oculist as he very dexterously pocketed two of the pool balls, the handsome ringer more familiarly known as the 15th ball, and the white ball itself, thereby adding somewhat to the minus side of his string. Talking about inventions, I had a curious experience last August. It was an experience which was not only interesting from an inventive point of view, but it had likewise a moral which will become more or less obvious as I unfold the story. You know, I rented and occupied a place in Yonkers last summer. It was situated on the highlands to the north of the city, a little this side of Greystone, overlooking that magnificent stream, the Hudson, the ever-varying beauties of which so few of the residents along its banks really appreciate. It was a comfortable spot with a few trees about it, a decent-sized garden large enough to raise a tomato or two for a Sunday night salad, and a lawn which was a cure for sore eyes, its soft, sheeny surface affording a most restful object upon which to feast the tired optic. I believe it was that lawn that first attracted me as I drove by the place with the patient I had in tow. It was just after a heavy shower, and the sun breaking through the clouds and lighting up the rain-soaked grass gave to it a glistening golden greenness that to my eyes was one of the most beautiful and soul-satisfying bits of color. Got my green hat on. Must have known. And Cheryl's gorgeous shawl that she made me. So maybe the green doesn't quite go with this. It's just what I grabbed. For a summer of that, I said to myself, little thinking that the beginning of a summer thereof was to fall to my lot before many days. For on May 1st, I signed papers which made me, to all intents and purposes, proprietor of the place for the ensuing 6 months. At one corner of the grounds stood, I should say, a dozen apple trees, the spreading branches of which seemed to form a roof for a sort of enchanted bower, in which, you may be sure, I passed many of the leisure hours swinging idly in a hammock. The cool breezes from the Hudson, concerning which so many people are skeptical, but which nevertheless exist, bringing delight to the ear and nostril as well as to the fevered brow, which is so fashionable in the neighborhood of New York in the summer, making the leaves rustle in a tuneful sort of fashion, and laden heavily with the sweet odors of many a garden close over which they passed before they got to me. "Put that in rhyme, doctor, and there's your poem," said the lieutenant as he made a combination scratch involving every ball on the table. "I'll do it," said the doctor, "and then I'll have it printed as Appendix J to the 3rd edition of my work on 60 astigmatisms. That's what's wrong with my eyes. And how to acquire them." But to get back to my story, he continued, "I was lying there in my hammock one afternoon trying to take a census of the butterflies in sight when I thought I heard someone back of me call me by name. Instantly the butterfly census was forgotten and I was on the alert. But whether there was something the matter with my eyes or not, I do not know. Despite all my alertness, there wasn't a soul in sight that I could see. Of course, I was slightly mystified at first, and then I attributed the interruption either to imagination or to some passer-by whose voice, wafted on the breeze, might have reached my ears. I threw myself back into the hammock once more and was just about dozing off to the lullaby sung by a bee to the accompaniment of the rustling leaves, when I again heard my name distinctly spoken. This time there was no mistake about it, for as I sprang to my feet and looked about, I saw coming towards me a man of unpleasantly cadaverous aspect, whose years I should judge were at least 80 in number. His beard was so long and scant that to keep the breezes from blowing it about to his discomfort, he had tucked the ends of it into his vest pocket. His eyes, black as coals, were piercing as gimlets. Let's see what gimlets are. A gimlet is a hand tool for drilling small holes, mainly in wood, without splitting. Y'all might have known that. Their sharpness equaled by nothing that I had ever seen, excepting perhaps the point of this same person's nose, which was long and thin, suggesting a razor and a bowie point. His slight body was clad in sombre garb, and at first glance he appeared to me so disquietingly like a visitor from the supernatural world that I shuddered. But when he spoke, his voice was all gentleness, and whatever of fear I had experienced was in a moment dissipated. "You are Dr. Carey?" he said in a timid sort of fashion. "Yes," I replied, "I am. What can I do for you?" "The distinguished oculist?" he added, as if not hearing my question. "Well, I'm sort of a notorious eye doctor," I answered, my well-known modesty preventing my entire acquiescence in his manner of putting it. He smiled pleasantly as I said this, and then he drew out of his coat-tail pocket a small tin box, which, until he opened it, I suppose contained a drinking cup, one of those folding tin cups. "Dr. Carey," said he, sitting down in the hammock which I had vacated, and toying with the tin box, a proceeding that was so extraordinarily cool that it made me shiver, "I've been looking for you for just 63 mortal years." "Excuse me," I returned, as nonchalantly as I could, considering the fact that I was beginning to be annoyed. "Excuse me, but that statement seems to indicate that I was born famous, which I'm inclined to doubt, inasmuch as I am not yet 50 years old. I cannot understand how it has come to pass that you've been looking for me for 63 years. "Nevertheless, my statement was correct," said he. "I've been looking for you for 63 years, but not for you as you." This made me laugh, although it added slightly to my nervousness, which was now beginning to return. To have a man with a tin box in his hand tell me he'd been looking for me for 13 years longer than I had lived, and then to have him add that it was not, however, me as myself that he wanted, was amusing in a sense. And yet I could not help feeling that it would be a relief to know that the tin box did hold a drinking cup and not dynamite. "You seem to speak English," I said, in answer to his remark. "I've always thought I understood that language pretty well, but you'll excuse me if I say I don't see your point." "Why is it that great men are so frequently obtuse?" he said languidly, giving the ground such a push with his toe that it set the hammock swinging furiously. "When I say I've searched for you all these years, but not for you as you, I meant not for you as Dr. Carey, not for you as an individual, but for you as the possessor of a very rare eye." "Go on," I said feebly, and rubbed my forehead, thinking perhaps my brains had gotten into a tangle and were responsible for this extraordinary affair. "What is the peculiar quality which makes my eye so rare?" "There is only one pair of eyes like them in the world that I know of," said the stranger, "and I have visited all lands in search of them, and experimented with all kinds of eyes." "And I'm the proud possessor of that pair?" I queried, becoming slightly more interested. "Not you," said he. "You and I together possess that pair, however." You and I cried. Yes, said he. Your left eye and my right eye have the honor of being the only two unique eyes in the world. That's weird, too, I observed, a mixture of sarcasm and flippancy in my tones, I fear. You mean Twantique? Not sure. Twonique, don't you? The old gentleman drew himself up with dignity, made a gesture of impatience, and remarked that if I intended to be flippant, he would leave me. Of course, I would not hear of this now that my curiosity had been aroused, so I apologized. Don't mention it, he said, but my dear doctor, you cannot imagine my sensations when I found your eye yesterday. Oh, you found it yesterday, did you? I put in. Yes, he said, on 43rd Street. I was on 43rd Street yesterday, I replied, but really I was not conscious of the loss of my eye. Nobody said you had lost it, said my visitor. I only said I found it. I mean by that I found it as Columbus found America. America was not necessarily lost before it was found. I had the good fortune to be passing through the street as you left your club. I glanced into your face as I passed, caught sight of your eye, and my heart stood still. There at last was that for which I had so long and so earnestly searched, and so overcome was I with joy at my discovery that I seemed to lose all power of speech, of locomotion, or of sane thought. And not until you had passed entirely out of sight did I return really to my senses. Then I rushed madly to the clubhouse. I had seen you leave a few moments. Where'd I go? A few moments before. Described you to the man at the door, learned your name and address, and well, here I am. And what does all this extraordinary nonsense lead up to? I asked. What do you intend to do about my eye? Do you wish to borrow it, buy it, steal it? Dr. Carey, said my visitor sadly, I shall not live very long. I have reason to believe that another summer will find me in my grave, and I do not want to die without imparting to the world the news of a marvelous discovery I have made. The details of a wonderful invention that I have not only conceived but have actually put into working order. I, an unknown man, too old to be able to refute the charge of senility, were anyone disposed to question the value of my statements, could announce to the world my great discovery 1,000 times a day, and very properly the world would decline to believe in me. The world would cry humbug, and I should have been unable, had I failed to find you, to convince the world that I was not a humbug. With the discovery of your eye, all that has changed. I shall have an ally in you, and that is valuable for the reason that your statements, whatever they may be, will always be entitled to and will receive respectful attention. Here in this box is my invention. I shall let you discover its marvelous power for yourself, hoping that when you have discovered its power, you will tell the world of it and of its inventor. With that, said the doctor, the old fellow handed me the tin box, which I opened with considerable misgivings. As to possible results, there was no explosion, however. The cover came off easily enough, and on the inside was a curiously shaped telescope, not a drinking cup as I had first surmised. Why, it's a telescope, isn't it? I said. Yes, why do you suppose it was? He asked. I hadn't an idea, I replied, not exactly truthfully, but it can't be Can't be good for much in this shape, I added, for as I pulled the parts out and got it to its full length, I found that each section was curved and that the whole formed an arc, which, though scarcely perceptible, nevertheless, should it seem to me, have interfered with the utility of the instrument. That's the point I want you to establish one way or the other, said my visitor, getting up out of the hammock and pacing nervously up and down the lawn. To my eye, that telescope is a marvel, and is the result of years of experiment. It fulfills my expectations, and if your eye is what I think it is, I shall have at last found another to whom will appear the treasure it appears to me to be. You have a tower on your house, I see. Let us go up on the roof of the tower and test the glass. Then we shall see if I claim too much for it. The earnestness of the old gentleman interested me hugely, and led the way through the garden to the house, up the tower stairs to the roof, and then standing there looking across the river at the Palisades, looming up like a large fortress before me, I put the telescope to my eye. I see absolutely nothing, I said, after vainly trying to fathom the depths of the instrument. Alas, began the old gentleman, and then he laughed nervously. You're using the wrong eye. Try the other one. It's your left eye that has the power to show the virtues of this glass. I obeyed his order, and then a most singular thing happened. Strange sights met my gaze. At first I could see nothing but the Palisades opposed me, but in an instant my horizon seemed to broaden. The vista through the telescope deepened, and before I knew it, my sight was speeding. Now through a beautiful country, over fields, hills, and valleys, then on through great cities, out to and over a broad, gently undulating stretch, which I at once recognized as the prairie lands of the West. In a minute more I began to catch the idea of this wonderful glass, for I now saw rising up before me the wonderful beauties of the Yosemite, and then like a flash of lightning my vision passed over the Sierra Nevada range. My eye swept down upon San Francisco and was soon speeding over the waters of the Pacific. Now, I think I'm going to have to stop right there, guys and gals. Else I'm sleeping. Like usual, I did take a nap before I got on. I went to bed at 3 something, got up at 6 something. Crazy. Don't think there's much more, so we'll probably end that tomorrow and then pick something else by this fella. Hopefully this ends well. I do like his humor. Okay, see you later. Have a great day. I'm not on live today, but I'm sure somebody is, so I'll probably see you around. Love to you all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. Bye-bye.